Hello, everybody, and welcome to this PLN 30. This PLN 30 is going to teach you the basics of Google Forms. So, this PLN 30 is called Fun with Google Forms. And my name is Allie Nickerson. I am one of your digital innovators here in the district, and I will be facilitating this PLN 30 for you all. So, on the agenda, we are going to cover how to create a Google form, the different question types within a Google form, and how to view responses. So, very quickly, I'm going to give you an overview and then I'm going to jump into Google Forms and show you how to create a Google form of your own. To create a Google form of your own, you're going to go to forms.google.com. You can also go to forms.new and Google will automatically create a Google form for you. But by going to forms.google.com, you'll be able to browse templates, see past forms that you have created, and much more. So today we are going to go to forms.google.com. Once you go to forms.google.com, you're going to see one of the forms looks like this. So we're going to cover the different question types. There is a short answer option, a paragraph option, a multiple choice option, checkboxes, a drop down. You can have students upload files to you. So if you want them to prove that they completed an assignment or a worksheet, you could have them upload it to a Google form to show you. You can also include a linear scale, a multiple choice grid, or a checkbox grid. I'm going to show you what all of those look like because I know that that can sound confusing just looking at it and hearing what it is, but we are going to go in depth on what it is. There's also an option to include a date and a time within your Google form. The last thing that we're going to do is we are going to go over the responses and how to view what everybody has answered within your Google form. So let's jump into Google Forms. So like I said, back in creating a Google form, we want to go to forms.google.com. So once we get to forms.google.com, it will change the URL to actually be a Google Doc URL, but we are in Forms right now. You can see that by looking in the top left corner here. So here we have a template gallery, and I want to expand on this just a little bit. So Google has a general gallery for you, like a blank quiz, an exit ticket, an assessment, a worksheet, or a course evaluation. So you can click on one of these. So say I want to give an assessment. Google automatically has created a template for you. So there's a photo back here. It says assessment. It has a spot for the students to include their name, email, and then for you to start typing questions. So you can explore more of these templates and see how to use them in your own classroom. There are also some personal templates. So at the beginning of the year, if you would like contact info for parents, you could send out a Google form. If you want to find a time for conferences, you could send out a Google form and just some other templates that Google has already created for you. Same for work. And then what is really cool is that Google also offers a Tempe school district template. So within your school, if there's a certain template that you are asked to use, you can just go right in here and pick a template. So now I can see all of my past forms that I have made similar to Google Docs and Google Slides. By being on Google, it will show you the most recent ones. So I am actually going to show you how to create your own blank quiz first, and then I'll show you a quiz that I have created. So I'm going to create a blank form right here. So now in this form, I'm going to show you how to navigate and change some of the settings. So just by clicking, you can change the name. So instead of an untitled form, I'm going to say math quiz. And then I can tell my students today we will practice multiplication times 5. So now what I could do is I could upload a picture if I wanted to, and I could do a Google image search, something from Google Drive, from my camera, from a URL. I could look up any picture to include. So if I wanted a picture of 5 times 3 with an array for students, I could upload that for them. If I want to just go straight into the quiz and just have questions listed, I could also say 5 times 2. Google is going to predict what kind of an answer you want from students. So here you can see that Google thinks that having a short answer text is the most appropriate, which I would agree with because that way students are typing in their answer. If you wanted to make it multiple choice though, you could go to multiple choice and insert different options for students. By clicking enter, you can add a new response. Google also offers suggestions for you to add questions. So now I have one question already built out for students. Again, with the images, you could have images as the answer as well. So if you wanted to say choose the array that best fits 5 times 2, you can include different pictures of arrays and have students pick the array that is 5 times 2. Some of the other features here, you can duplicate this question. So if you like the way that this is set up, it saves you a lot of time to just be able to go in here and change one aspect. So if I knew that I wanted my entire form to just be multiple choice questions over and over and over, and I'm doing times 5 for the whole quiz, I can just keep duplicating and going in and changing the answers and just the one number that I'm changing throughout the quiz. So it's super easy to duplicate your question. Now let's go back here. So that's duplicate. If I decide I don't want a question, I can delete it. And then I can also make it required for students. I usually turn this on for students because they can just skip the question if it is not required. Depending on why you are giving the student the Google form, maybe you want them to be able to skip questions, maybe you don't, but I usually turn required on, especially for a quiz or a CFA. There's also this 3-dot feature next to the required. You can shuffle the option order. You can include a description. So if you want to give kids a hint or say, think about the arrays that we built and use that if you think it will help you, you can add a description to your question. And then also you can include go to section based on answer. So what this means is that say a student said 5 times 2 and they got 10 as their answer, and I say that's correct. Now they can just submit the form, they're good to go. If they got 5 as the answer and I'm thinking, uh-oh, they are really struggling here, I could include a question that's actually a YouTube video describing 5 times 2 or a video with my mini lesson of how to multiply times 5 and make them go back to that section to watch the video, and then they'll come back and try to answer the question again. So you can design the form to make the students have to get the correct answer before they submit if you want to. This does require more work on your end to create those resources for students and to select the sections along the way, but that is a very cool feature for students and for you. So I'm going to toggle all of these off because I do not want that. This is just a quick assessment for me as a teacher, and I just want to see how my kids are doing. So this is how you could create a quick math quiz. This would be a great exit ticket or a great way for you to see how the class in general is doing with a certain standard. By clicking on the little waffle here, you can also move the questions around if you would like to change the order. So I'm going to quickly go over all of these in the toolbar with you, and then I'm going to show you an example quiz that I have already made with every question type. So we're going to skip the question type for right now because we're going to go over that next. If you want to import questions from past Google Forms that you have created, here you have the ability to do that. It's super awesome. So you can choose any form that you have used before and import certain questions. So that way you do not have to keep creating the same Google form over and over. It's kind of like that duplicate button. The next button here allows us to add a title and description. So let's say that we are taking a multiplication quiz that is actually on times 5 and times 2. I could say, now Now we are going to multiply times 2. And then I could create a new section here. So instead of being 5 times 6, I could change it to 2 times 6 and then make sure I have the correct answer in there. So now the students know to read this before continuing on. The next two sections here, you have an add image option, and then you also have an add a YouTube video option. Let's say that I wanted to let my students have access to an image that showed them a formula or a multiplication chart while they were taking the quiz. I can do that by clicking add image. So if I go to Google image search and search for a multiplication chart, here's what Google gives me. I think that this one is good for the kids, so I'm going to insert that. So now here students have access to this multiplication chart because I want them to have it for the quiz. So here is your multiplication chart for the quiz. So now if students really need to, they can go back and look at the multiplication chart for the quiz. So next, I could add a YouTube video for students. So if I wanted to search multiplication times 5. And so I want my students to go back and watch this video on how to multiply times 5. I could put this at the beginning of the quiz also for students to have a good refresher. Or if I wanted to create this one of those go to sections, if a student missed a question, I could redirect them back to this video. And then they would watch the video and try the questions again. So that is a great way to give kids a mini lesson or to have them go do some independent learning. The final button that I have is to add a section. So if you want to, you can have the form have multiple pages so that students, once they finish one section, they move on to the next one. So this could be beneficial if you wanted to have multiple sections, like a times 5 section, times 2, times 3. You could make this form a continued multiplication form that helps students reinforce those facts. So that is everything in our toolbar off to the right. I'm going to show you very quickly what the responses and the settings look like right now. So right now I have 0 responses because no kids have the link to this form yet. I have not given anyone access. If I want kids to be able to submit the form, I toggle this on, which it already is, which means that it is accepting responses. I can also turn on get an email notification anytime somebody submits the form. By clicking the 3 dots here, I can also get an email notification from Google Forms anytime somebody completes the form. So if this is an ongoing form throughout the year, then you can turn that on. I can download the kids' responses, or I can select to have the destination of their responses go somewhere like a Google Sheet. So here it will create a new spreadsheet with all of their answers if I wanted to look at all of the information in a sheet. And then under settings, you can turn on to make this a quiz. You can toggle through the responses. I would turn on collecting email addresses because students' names will automatically be given to you through their email. So I always have this one turned on. You can have students receive an email copy of their responses. You can allow students to go in and edit their responses if you want them to. And you can limit it to only one response. So if you want kids using this form over and over, you do not want to have this on. But if this is a quiz that you only want them to take one time, then I would turn on limiting to one response. These are just some of the aesthetic forms of the presentation. So you can decide if you want kids to get a progress bar to see how close they are to being done, if you want to shuffle the question order, if you want students to get a confirmation message that their response has been recorded. You can edit that to say something else. Otherwise, that's what the form will say. You can show a link to submit another response. But right now I can't since I'm limited to only letting students take the quiz once. You can also have students view their results summary, and you can disable autosave for all students if you want to. I like to keep autosave just in case we run out of time or they need to finish the form later. This is a newer feature of Google Forms that is really nice. Before, if students did not submit the form, their work would be erased. But now, Google Forms, just like Docs and Slides, will keep their information saved even if they leave the URL or the page. So you can have it collect email addresses by default. I would definitely have this on. Make questions required by default. So having those two turned on, I would just do that because that way, anytime a student submits your form, you will get their email and every question will be required. So unless you have a form where you do not want students to answer a question, it would be beneficial to turn this on. So that is everything in the settings. If you wanted to change the theme up, you can change the color. You can choose a header image, have a background color in a different font. Again, this is more with the aesthetics of how you want your form to look. And now I can preview this by clicking on the eyeball. This is how a student would see my quiz. So they would see math quiz. Today we'll practice multiplication times 5. So then they would see their chart, they'd see the YouTube video, and then here's the next because I created a new section. And here they will answer all of the questions and then submit the form to me. Since I created the form and I have editing access, I can click down here to go back to edit the form. So that is the basics on how to create a Google form. There is one more thing that I want to show you if you are using this for assessment purposes. Under settings, if you turn on make this a quiz, you can release grades for students immediately or later. I liked to give students immediate feedback because that way they can see which questions they missed and see if they can notice why they missed it. So, under settings, if you turn this on to make it a quiz, you can go back to your questions and you can actually give your questions a correct answer. So, by clicking on the answer key, I can pick 10 as the correct answer, and I want this to be 2 points for my kids. However many points you want it to be, you get to decide. But that way, as soon as students are done with their quiz, they can see how many points they got correct. I can see that this quiz is 2 total points. You also have the option in the Chromebook settings to put locked mode on so that students aren't allowed to open other tabs. If you think that everything in the Google form is all that they need, then this could be really beneficial. So I already included the multiplication chart and the YouTube video, so they theoretically shouldn't need anything else. So having locked mode on might be a good option. Again, that is up to you and your personal preference. So now that we have seen the basics of how to create a Google form, I'm going to show you a form with all the different question types that I have already created. So over here, I created one. This is my PL in 30 example that I gave to some of the other digital innovators to take and help me out with. So I'm going to show you what it looks like to have different question types and what the responses look like from my end. So I made sure in the settings to collect email addresses so that way I would know who completed each quiz. So the first question type is the short answer text. So I asked, what is your favorite food? I made sure it was a required question too. The next question type is paragraph. So describe your dream vacation, and anyone who fills out the form is able to answer with a long answer. The next question type is multiple choice. And so I asked, what is your favorite color? And I gave students options. When you are creating a multiple choice question type, Google also gives you the option to include other and allow for people responding to type in their own answer in case you forgot one. Which hobbies would you be interested in learning? This one I allowed check boxes because there could be multiple answers. Which season is your favorite? This one is a drop down. So it's actually going to drop down and have these 4 options, and students will pick one. I said to upload a picture that makes you happy. A way that you could use this feature as a teacher is maybe you want to say upload your work to show proof that you completed today's assignment, upload a worksheet from today, upload something for proof. that would be a great way to use this feature, and it's from Google Drive, the file. The next question type was the linear scale. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I asked students, how much do you love coffee? And I said, you either hate it or you love it. And you can change this number as well, anywhere from 1 to 10 being the scale. This next question type is the multiple choice grid. So I'm going to show you what this looks like because this one and the next one can get a little bit confusing. So on the multiple choice grid, I gave an example where I am listing different shapes. And then my question for the students is, how many sides does each one have? So here I have the student view side, and this is what it looks like. So I have triangle, and then every shape that I gave has the same answer choices. That's basically what this question type is. That is the multiple choice grid question type. The next question type is the checkbox grid. So pretty similar. The way that it looks is like this. So instead of only having one option as an answer, students can check multiple. So that is the difference between the multiple choice and the checkbox. So for this one, I said to determine if each number is even or odd, and then I wanted to include a both option just so that you could see they can select more than one answer. And then the next question I asked is, when were you born? If you were talking about social studies or important events in history, you could ask students when a certain event took place. If this is the beginning of the year and you want to ask your students when they were born, so you have a collection of all their birthdays, this would be a great way to collect that as well. And what time do you wake up in the morning? So for this one, students will have the option to write a time in and choose AM or PM, similarly to how a calendar will pop up for the calendar question. This could be great if you wanted to add an image with this question that showed a clock for students learning how to tell time, and you could ask them, what time does the clock show? So those are all of the question types, and now let's go over some of the answers that I got. So under responses, there are 3 different sections. So right now I'm still accepting responses. So if anyone else with the link were to fill it out, I would still collect their quizzes. As of now, I have 4 people, and since I made sure to turn on collect their email addresses, I can see that Leslie, Paul, Lexi, and Mark have all submitted the quiz for me. So I can see the 4 responses, but it won't tell me who said what. This is if I want to get a summary glance of what my students are saying. Google will also automatically create a chart for you to see a percentage of what students have answered. So for example, I can see half of the people who have answered told me that blue is their favorite color. Also, keep in mind that for this question, I added the option to have an other response in case I had forgotten to include one. And we can see I did not include teal or black. The students actually wrote these in, and Google automatically created those for the chart based on the students' responses. So that's really cool. Which hobbies would you be interested in learning? I see a chart here. Google does a great job of making all of the results very visual for you as a teacher. Now, for upload a picture that makes you happy, I can view these in Google Drive and see all of the pictures that my students have uploaded for me. So here I can see that Leslie submitted this puppy picture. Mark sent in a picture of his family. Paul had sent in this GIF. And then we also had Lexi submit this picture for me. So it automatically creates a folder for you in Google Drive with all of these pictures. So if you had an assignment for your class, all of their work would be in the same folder in Google Drive. And so the list kind of goes on. Here I can see you're born. Google automatically will sort it by year, and then you'll get the dates all right here. So let's say that somebody who's born in July 1995, if in your class you had multiple students but the same year, Google will show you in a summary by the months what dates it happened. So here, this is July 6th, 1995, November 26th, 1989. So I can see all of that information at a glance. And then what time do you wake up in the morning? Google automatically fixes it for me to see very easily that I had somebody say 4 a.m., somebody said 5:30 a.m., somebody said 6:30, 6:35. So the 6 a.m.s are grouped together for me. If I click on question, I will see how students answered each individual question. So if I wanted to see why are all my students missing question number 3, I could go to question number 3 and see every response. So if they are all commonly missing it for the wrong answer, I can go through and discuss it with them. For individual responses, I can either go through with the arrows or I can use the drop down. So if I want to check out what Leslie said, I will click on her name and I see her favorite food's pizza, her dream vacations traveling to Hawaii with her entire family. Her favorite color wasn't any of the ones that I had listed. It's actually teal. Which hobbies would you be interested in learning? She said roller skating, underwater basket weaving, and extreme ironing. Which season is your favorite? She said winter. Upload a picture that makes you happy. We saw this earlier in the folder, and it was her picture of the puppy. How much do you love coffee? She is on a 10. She was able to correctly say how many sides each shape has and determine if each one is even or odd. She also put in her birthday and what time she wakes up in the morning. So that is what a sample quiz will look like. You also have the option to print out. So if you wanted to give students a hard copy to take home, you could print these out. The one thing that I forgot to mention is when you go to send a quiz, you can send it through email. So if you want to send this out by email, you can type in emails and people will get an email telling them to complete this form. The message will say, I've invited you to fill out a form. And then you can include the form in the email. What I typically like to do is include a link. You can also shorten the URL so it is not as intimidating. I usually go ahead and copy this and I can post this somewhere in Google Classroom. I could send it out through Relay. However you want students to access this form, having a link is super easy. There's also a way to embed it, but I would not recommend it, and we can't even do it because of the file upload questions for this quiz. So I would definitely stick to the link or through email. The final thing that you can do is you can create a spreadsheet. So let's say I want to create a new spreadsheet with all the answers that I got. Google will automatically create a Google Sheet for me that will include answers to all of the questions that I can just look at and see all of the answers and even get a link to that file upload. So if I wanted to just glance at it or keep record of how my students did on this quiz, I can easily convert it into a sheet and share this. This could be very beneficial for PLCs if you have a CFA that you have turned into a Google form and you want to share the data with any coaches or teammates or admin who want to know what kids are doing on these quizzes, you can quickly send them this sheet and then they have access to everything. Super awesome. So in this PLN 30, we were able to learn how to create a Google form, see the different question types, and view responses. So thank you so much for spending your time with me and learning more about Google Forms. I know that Google Forms were extremely helpful for me in the classroom. I would use it from things such as what should we name our class pets all the way to CFAs. So Google Forms can be used in various ways. The kids love to take them and it gives them that immediate feedback that is so essential to learning and really reinforcing concepts for students. So now that we have reached the end here, I have a Wakelet linked in this presentation. The Wakelet is also in the description of the YouTube video here. And here with the Fun with Google Forms, you can see the links to everything. I've also included some help links to templates that other people have created, why they believe that Google Forms are so helpful in the classroom, and then the link to get you your frontline credit for spending some time with me. Also, in the presentation, here is the direct link to that Google form, which we just spent our time talking about. So you will complete this Google form and we'll get you your frontline credit. Thank you guys so much for spending your time with me. I know that you're going to love Google Forms in the classroom. If you have any questions, please never hesitate to reach out to me or one of the other digital innovators, or you can email digitalinnovators1@tempeschools.org and one of us will reach out to you. So thank you so much for joining, and I will see you on the next PLN 30.